Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mark Murphy. I head up all things onboarding and customer success here at Shopbox AI, and I will be today's moderator of the webinar, which is titled AI-Driven Hyper-Personalization, the Key to Profitability in Retail, and lessons from kitlocker.com. And before I get the panelists to introduce themselves, guys, there's two PDFs in the chat box just here. And also there's a chat box that you can enter in your own questions that I'll read out at the end. Okay, so get the panelists to introduce themselves. Alan and Mike. Mike, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to our viewers and give a bit about yourself and KitLocker.
So I'm Mike Kent. I'm co-founder and managing director of kitlocker.com. We're a Sheffield-based e-commerce company, but not strictly e-commerce. Actually founded the company back in 2005 with a good friend of mine. We had come to a point at university and I was deciding what I wanted to do with my life, and it sort of made sense because we spotted some inherent failings in the supply of personalized sportswear, and we saw that e-com would be a great way of kind of plugging a gap as such. It's quite a cottage industry, and it especially was back then, so e-commerce was pretty non-existent at that point in time, so it looked as though it made sense. Our specific model allows customers to kind of order product with personalization, which will relate to their team or their organization, but also their kind of personalized name. But we wanted to kind of operate a model that worked to an MOQ of 1, which kind of led to us sort of unintentionally developing a kind of business that has an awful lot of kind of operational pinch points. So the only way that we felt we could solve it was the kind of combination of e-commerce to help the kind of order facilitation, and then almost like a custom operational workflow that kind of takes our stock product and allows us to kind of operate a just-in-time model. So very, very simple terms. I'm at Oxford University, I want an embroidered hoodie, and I'll order that and that'll be delivered in a kind of period of time. Fast forward 18 years, we've kind of meshed, as I've just mentioned, we've kind of meshed this e-com and operational systems. We run approximately 500 online stores that we've set up, and we've got kind of thousands of customer storefronts. We've created relationships with Nike, Adidas, Puma, but more recently sort of Castore and Umbro. And we work with customers such as Oxford University, the FA, Premier League, but also your kind of Dog and Duck United, for want of a better term. And for context, approximately 30% of our business kind of goes to our core D2C, which is our e-com platform, which isn't personalized product predominantly, and the remainder goes to what we'd kind of deem to be our kind of team channels.
Thanks for that, Mike. And over to you, Alan.
Very good. So you said a really good word there for me, Mike. You only set up a company because you see it failing, or you're frustrated with something. So we kind of come from the same perspective. I got frustrated in different thing. I'm not as sporty as you, so I was the geeky guy. So basically, I'm about 26 years in the AI industry and got really frustrated about 10 years ago with only seeing large companies take really good advantage of really, really deep technology, and started to realize that with AI, especially in retail, that there's things we could do that would be much more innovative. So the whole thing started to become for me around how do you take really high-end capabilities and make them available to absolutely everyone. And we kind of took a step back about 5 or 6 years ago, tried out a few things in a previous company, and then realized that the gap between Amazon and everyone else was just way too big. So Amazon seemed to have this amazing capability and no one was really trying to play catch up. So we thought, okay, well, if nobody else is doing it, we should do that. So so then became co-founder and CEO of Shopbox, or became by setting it up. And yeah, we focused everything then in the last few years on how do we take really interesting AI, put the customer at the center of the store, and provide kind of high-end capabilities to absolutely anyone without you guys having to build a whole team around it and learn it all yourselves from scratch, which seemed to be the only way you could do it a few years ago. Yeah, so that's kind of where I come from, but it's back to failings and frustrations.
Yes, very passionate with that. That's the, yeah, really comes through.
Absolutely.
So my first question to you then, Mike, is what led KitLocker to discover Shopbox AI?
So we were kind of at the time looking for, I guess, maximizing our kind of in-flight customer value as such, and looking at kind of management and sort of manageable ways of getting intelligent product recommendations. And part of our problem is that we have quite a large product engine, so multiple suppliers, lots and lots of different SKUs. As an internal task, it didn't feel as though it was something that was achievable. So we kind of went to market to look at, I guess, appraising a few of your competitors. And what we really kind of, I guess, like about Shopbox was one, like I mentioned Alan's passion. That was quite a big thing in terms of kind of getting us on board. But almost that the tech was very much customer centric. So it kind of ticked a big box for us. Some great functionality, which we'll kind of go into, I think.
Yeah, sure. We sure will. So yeah, look, over the last few years, we've seen retailers face many challenges, some unique to each retailer, depending on the industry. So what were some of the challenges that you faced and many other retailers faced in the last year or so?
So we've specifically seen issues around the kind of, I guess, increased product costs, and that goes outside just core products and a lot of our kind of consumables, which we use in our kind of team side of our business. There's a sort of shrinking margin effect as well. And this is part and parcel of the kind of re-strategizing of some of our kind of larger brands and how they're handling their kind of cost bases, I guess. We've also seen increased competition. So obviously that kind of shift to more online, which has just put pressure on sort of advertising spend and is really sort of challenging for ROAS. And we also kind of unfortunately wound up our Irish business as a result of some of the hurdles that we were experiencing from kind of post-Brexit, which a lot of our kind of trading position could be cross Europe, but that feels as though that's been kind of blocked off. And I kind of mentioned this sort of the way that brands are now looking at their strategy. There's been an awful lot of talk about this kind of direct to consumer piece, and it's starting to settle a little bit post-pandemic, but long and short is there's been challenges pretty much on every front. So it's been a fun time.
Sounds certainly. So yeah, the same kind of question then to you, Alan, in the scope of what we're doing here. What kind of challenges have you seen in retailer space?
Yeah, like so the things we're seeing are exactly what Mike said there. Like the increased competition has been really interesting. Interesting never seems to be a good word these days. But it has been really weird over the last 3 years. Like so many, we went from if you build it, they will come, to then, especially over the pandemic, absolutely everyone who thought they were involved in retail suddenly was online and really driving costs through the roof on advertising. So like the cost of Google has gone crazy. And one of the things that it was fortuitous for us, because one of the things that we were really focused on was we often talk about the cycle of reacquisition. And we realized that so much advertising budget was actually being used to keep customers engaged rather than get them through the front door. So a lot of what we see in the margin erosion has been around the cost of advertising as well as the cost of product. And we got to spend that money better because we still need them to come through the front door because the competition is going up, but we got to make sure they're spending more time in the shop and less time out in the wilds of Google. So we're seeing that as a huge theme. And I guess we'll probably come on to it a bit more later, but one of the things that I think is a positive on the way things are going is people are really focused on customer now. I think 3 or 4 years ago, you could run a retail business by just driving traffic and not really caring about customer as much, just keep paying for them all the time. Whereas what I've noticed, especially in the last year, all retailers are focused on how do I keep customers engaged? How do I use really cheap methods of keeping them constantly coming back and delighting them rather than having to pay for that all the time because we just can't afford it. So there's some positive stuff coming out, I think, from a customer perspective and for good retailers.
So we laid out a few challenges there, both of you guys. Mike, how did KitLocker address those specific challenges that you guys faced?
So like me and Alan were having a bit of a discussion last week, and he says that we're in I guess a relatively sort of fortunate position. I say fortunate in that we have kind of good digital and sort of tech capabilities in-house. I think that that's been quite a good positive in hindsight for us sort of navigating a lot of the challenges, because we've been, I guess, able to be quite agile. But it's also sort of allowed us to move relatively quickly on implementing a number of sort of third-party tools. So Shopbox is one of a number that we've probably integrated over the last maybe 12 to 18 months. And it's helped us to get more competitive, like on the acquisition of search volume, so trying to be a little bit more efficient at that piece. And then with Shopbox, it's really sort of helped to improve that customer centricity that Alan was just talking about, and that sort of personalisation. On the kind of core principle being that we're making the most of the traffic that we kind of managed to attract to the site, and giving them a reason to come back.
Yeah.
So is there anything you can speak on about, marketing tools or even marketing campaigns, maybe just tips for the viewers around that space as well, around that customer centricity, the personalization? Can you speak on that a bit?
And I guess like I've kind of touched on some of the other tools that we've kind of put in place. So we're trying to kind of look at how we better leverage tools in combination. So specifically, we've done some really quite personalised campaigns around World Cup and International Women's Day, and how they kind of play into our realm as such. So utilising Shopbox with, say, Klaviyo, which is another one of these kind of integrations we've used. And I guess from our perspective, like the 2022 has been quite a positive year in that net revenues have probably increased about 20%. And these tools have played quite a big part in sort of in helping us kind of drive that growth.
Yep, certainly. There's something that we did recently actually with you as well, Mike, which I'm going to make viewers aware of. I'm going to try and do this at the same time if I can do it properly. I'm going to share my screen. It's something we did recently with you guys, which I was part of with your team, which are always really quick to respond and try new things. We did something called the Just For You page, or For You page. You guys have it branded as, which to give the viewers context before I show it. Essentially, it's a curated kind of frictionless loyalty page just for your customers, with all our Shopbox elements there, or components. I'm going to try and share the screen. So, oh, this is the wrong screen. Ready?
Okay, Mike, we're going to have to talk over him while the car crash happens.
There it is. Got it right? Boom. So, folks, just to kind of segue slightly, and we try to be quick here. This is KitLocker's homepage, so feel free to go on their website and have a browse. And once you do, you'll notice that they have a For You page, which I believe, Mike, you've conjoined with a marketing campaign of your own. So you've sent this out to recommend to customers to go onto this page. And if you go to the For You page now, if anyone's watching this, you'll notice that this is all recommendations based on my behavior. Recently viewed, featured, which will kick over to recently purchased as well, if I've made a purchase here. Promotions for you, and new arrivals, which will kick over to new for you as well. So if you're watching this, feel free, and if you're watching this after we publish it, go on to kitlocker.com, have a browse, and go onto the For You page. It's something that these guys have done with us, and it's a new kind of repurposing of our grids. So I'm going to stop sharing.
And this specifically will kind of form part of our sort of footer, our standard footers for all of our email marketing campaigns, because again, it's a kind of great way to get customers that have obviously shopped with us previously kind of back in with specific product recommendations. So yeah, been a really good tool for us.
I just realized I wasn't sharing the screen. Is that right? Sorry.
Don't worry, we'll send a video out afterwards. But I think just a couple of things there on what you said, Mike, like the stuff like have really good technical skills at the center of your organization. Obviously, Mark isn't one of those because he can't share a screen. But that's been really important. Like it was you kind of sparked the idea around it's time for us to now start creating a personal part of the store where somebody feels it's theirs. And because you've got the team, that it was really quick for us to work with you guys and have that ready, and now it's available to every customer. And it's really important because it allows us to take advantage of ideas really, really fast. And I think There are retailers we worked with where they really struggle with that because they just don't have the skills internally, and they need to build them up. Or they're not working with the right agencies that have those skills for them, or whatever it might be. So I think that becomes really, really important to be agile these days.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add to that, there should be a chat here, a link to what I was trying to share. It should be in the chat box for anyone again watching this retrospectively. It's kitlocker.com/4-u. So feel free to browse when you get a chance. Okay, guys. So we've identified some of those challenges, broadly speaking, across all retailers. But let's kind of hone in on online retail specifically, and KitLocker specifically as well. You've been in business for over 18 years. Is that right, Mike? I think you said it was around 18 years. So you've seen a lot. That said, have you seen recent developments, or how have you seen recent developments impact online e-commerce?
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of some of that hangover or the kind of pandemic piece that, and especially in our sort of core sectors, we are seeing people kind of specifically focus on refining their direct consumer sort of e-com presence, which it's for us, it's a great sideline piece of business for us. We do take it very seriously, but it's almost a kind of secondary benefit as such. But what's happened is that this has driven those sort of levels of competition, and it's really felt in the kind of paid for streams. And what we're also kind of seeing at the same time is that they're experiencing some of these new entrants as such as sort of experience some of the pain points that we traditionally experience. So a lot of that's kind of operational, but it's also around kind of maximizing that kind of user experience on site to make the most of the customers that we do attract. But yeah, so kind of short term, this is creating some turbulence, which it'll be interesting to see sort of how that plays through. But yeah, it's one of those bits that helps drive us.
So similar question to you, Alan. 2020 forced a step change by driving a lot of retailers online, or to put far more emphasis on their e-commerce store. Do you feel this has improved e-commerce overall, or has it, muddied the water a bit? What's your take?
It's kind of a bit of both. Like, I think the initial thing was it's driven up competition and costs. But what it has also done is it started to move everyone on to think about customer. And I think things like omni-channel have changed completely. Like, I think people are starting to see it less as channels and more as there's a customer experience that needs to be managed across everything. Somebody said to me recently, like, have you ever seen anybody not use a QR code in the last week? Whereas, 3 years ago, nobody had used one. Whereas now people are in their 80s and 90s and they're zapping QR codes. So I think it's just made it an awful lot easier for retailers to engage with people, but we got to move on. It has definitely created huge competitive costs. So I think retailers that are better at engaging customers are always going to win in that scenario, but there's a bigger customer base out there for us to work with.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword for you, Mike. More online customers, more competition. It's kind of a paradox in a way. Maybe you can touch on that.
Yeah, and I kind of sort of was just sort of touching on this before, but I think it feeds my, I guess, natural inclination to be in a constant state of flux. So I guess I'm never really settled when standing still. So like the increased competition, I guess, just provides more, and I say kind of internal narrative for the team to drive that kind of iterative change. And it's great chatting with Alan, because it almost feels as though there is that similar passion to just kind of go, well, what's the next cool thing, or what's the next way to improve what we're doing? My team probably hate me as a result, and Alan, you may feel similar. You're probably more charismatic than I am, but it's I guess it's what I really enjoy about being in business. That kind of, I guess, that natural competition just sort of drives you on a touch.
Yeah. So let me just bring up my panel here.
Sorry, I hope they don't hate me, by the way, but anyway, sure.
There's my opportunity to everybody. Yeah, so bring it back to, I suppose, today's topic, hyper personalization, leveraging AI. What are some of the biggest obstacles that retailers face when it comes to providing personalized experiences for their customers? Like for brick and mortar, is traditionally about the service element, the sales assistant, giving and guiding the shopper along their journey. Not something easily transferable online. So maybe you can speak to those obstacles. That's
Yeah,
to you, Mike. Sorry. Yep.
yeah. So from our perspective, we have, I guess, on one side, quite a sort of large product portfolio. And obviously this is all in kind of context and perspective. But from our perspective, trying to do anything intelligent around sort of placing products in front of customers, because we also have quite a disparate audience. It's a bit of a hybrid audience is sort of how we kind of reference it. But Shopbox allows us to do this, and I say at scale, it's across that entire kind of e-com ecosystem. And it doesn't take, obviously the setup did, and there are refining elements as we go, and there's certain tools that we can kind of now use, but it doesn't take up much in terms of our internal resource. And that's hugely important, because as soon as it's an internal tool, it creates a whole new layer of kind of process that we need to resource and kind of establish a way of doing that. We are also doing a bit of kind of side work around developing some of the recommendations that are designed around some of the specific nuances in some of our sectors. So we have a lot of customers that will shop for a team or an organization, so larger basket values, different sort of associated product, or shopping by color. But all of these bits are kind of really quite exciting sort of development tools, and it's only through really intelligent tech that you can properly leverage that. And it also, as a side, it helps us to navigate the kind of first-party cookie issues that I guess everyone's feeling the pain with, which for us was a bit of a kind of unintended, I guess, positive of the sort of implementation with Shopbox.
Yeah. Just conscious of time here, folks. I believe this is 25 past. This is meant to run up. So I'm going to try and push on a little bit. So you spoke a bit about Mike, you spoke a bit about the issues about leveraging that. And then the same kind of question to you then, what have you noticed, we've onboarded, was it just nearly 60 customers now? I think it's a similar thing we hear. Maybe you can speak to that as well.
Yeah. So for me, it's really simple. AI should make your life easier, not harder. And one of the reasons that we started Shopbox was way too many barriers, way too much effort, way too much risk. That shouldn't be there. The whole point is that it can automate what you said there, Mike, around managing customers at scale. Every customer should feel like they have a personal shopper with them in the store. There's no reason not to anymore. The technology is there. So the whole point is that we should take work off the retailer, because funny enough, retailers can't employ people right now. Like, you just can't find people to do the work, or you can't keep them. So it's a really difficult problem. And that's why, for me, if AI is causing you more work, it's not really AI. What you're doing is you're using that old style personalization, where you kind of put in rules and tell people what they should buy. But actually, it should just listen to customers all the time. And we know that when we're on Netflix or Amazon or whatever, we know the machine is listening to us and starting to guide us in ways that are interesting for us. And I think that's what becomes really important for AI. That's the point of it. So it should be making all our lives easier. It's not always the case, but that's the way it should feel.
For sure. And not just with Shopbox here, but have you also included other AI into your marketing tech stack? This is for you, Mike.
Yeah.
Have you also done that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we kind of have. We've got, I sort of want to say, algorithmic shopping support, which is a kind of agency piece. So it is deploying some intelligence at that kind of front to place ads better. We use a copywriting tool that is that's kind of AI based as well, so helping to kind of get product descriptions and bits and pieces in place. But we also use an awful lot of kind of AI and automations across our operational stack, which is, it's not in our kind of MarTech stack as such, but if it can be deployed and it adds value, then it's why not? It's just going to make life an awful lot easier.
Yep. I suppose then the next question would be, how does Shopbox then differ? This is for you, Alan. How does Shopbox differ from other AI solutions on the market?
Well, like some of what Mike mentioned there is stuff that we would be more likely to work together with, because I think there's loads of different places AI can be deployed. And so I think the real thing we focused on is 100% automation. The machine should listen to the customer. It should understand product at a very deep level, and then work from there. And one of the things that we focused on from day one is, how do you apply AI in situations where you don't have data? So new products don't have data, but they're the most important products. They're the ones you want to get moving because they're high margin. Mm-hmm. So we had to kind of throw everything in the bin and start again and say, actually, there's a different type of AI is required to move new product fast. There's a different type of AI that's required to understand a customer when they've landed for the very first time and we have no historical data. So that's where we really try to focus, because that's where there's the biggest bang for your buck as a retailer, is get customers moving fast and get new product moving fast. Everything else, your margins get protected if you can do that. If not, you're just selling more bestsellers to the same customers over and over again. So that's really where we focused, and that's why the tech works a bit differently.
And like a couple of the kind of the sort of issues that Alan's sort of raised there, almost that kind of cold start issue with new products. It's great to see that it's almost the out-of-box solution. So we're kind of circulating our new products, getting them in front of customers, and then also almost the kind of start point. So some of the product blocks are driven by Shopbox on our homepage, which is great. Yes, it's fed into all of our kind of PDPs, etc., but it's kind of introducing that at the very kind of first port of call as such, and then just improves as the kind of user journey goes on. But the one part of the functionality that I really kind of liked from the very start was the kind of more like this functionality that then triggers the similar product widget. Apologies for the tech terminology, guys, but
that's right on the money. That's correct.
But it provides something very kind of tangible for customers to kind of drop back and have that kind of recommendations piece, which we didn't see that in the marketplace when we were looking. But I thought that was a really good novel way of kind of solving that issue.
Very good. And yeah, we touched on the For You page as well. So again, if I could get it to share, I'd share it now. But guys, moving on into plans for the future. Again, conscious of time, but a question to both of you. So what's next for Shopbox AI, and what's next for KitLocker? So Alan, if you don't mind going first.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of what we're doing there's loads of stuff we got on the roadmap, but a lot of it is driven by feedback we're getting from customers. So integration into things like MarTech stack is really important. So we're working with a few customers on integration into things like email and chat, and we'll be bringing out products specific to that to make it easier in the next couple of months. Also, like, we've had retailers come back and say, look, our search capability isn't working. Your AI seems to know more about product than a search engine does. Why aren't you doing that? So we're looking at stuff like that. But yeah, an awful lot of it is driven by the fact that there's a lot more customers are coming back saying, we're having problems here and your AI does this thing. Why can't we twist it to do that? So we are twisting it to do that. And I think the other thing for us on there's so many more places inside web stores that there is content that isn't necessarily about product, but we can make it much better for customers. So there are areas we're looking around things like rich content that a lot of retailers are providing, and how do we make that much more interesting for customers? So yeah, watch this space on that one.
And I guess that kind of is part and parcel of our starting point for a lot of that development, whether it's AI or whether it's other kind of clever tools. A lot of the time I'll drop Alan a line and just say, thinking about solving this issue. He's like, bear with us, we'll be with you in terms of what it is. But we will try and look at leveraging a lot of the benefit from some of our other tools. So it's almost, where do we leverage Shopbox to help us with Klaviyo, for instance? How can we get something intelligent there? You mentioned search. That's always an interesting kind of area to look at. But we also, again, that kind of approach across our business. But it's fascinating looking at that kind of cross functionality. So something that might well be an operational fix could potentially provide real benefit on the storefront. And it's almost having that, it's not a blinkered approach to some of this stuff, but it is great chatting to Alan because he's generally full of good ideas.
My 9 a.m. calls every day. Tons of ideas. Guys, I'm going to have to wrap things up, unfortunately. We're on the half-hour mark. So I'm going to move up to just a Q&A, and then I'll tell the viewers how to reach out if they want to reach out to you guys. So there's a question here to Mike. How much effort was it to implement this AI tech into KitLocker?
So a part of the piece that we needed to start on was cleaning up our kind of product engine, but that was something that was kind of us. But the actual implementation, I think, was pretty quick. It might have been, I don't know whether kind of between teams was maybe a week or two, Alan. You might have more kind of.
I think it's probably more design work than anything else. Just fitting in with the designs. I think it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, but the kind of product side of things drives much more benefit through the, I guess, through all of our MarTech. So our search leverages the same kind of information, but it's necessary to kind of make that as powerful as can be.
Very good. Thanks for that, Mike. Another question here for, I think this one will be for you, Alan. Is AI more suitable for shops who have big catalogs of products? What's your view on that?
Good question. Yeah, you like for us, it's really about for a bit of variety. Once there's about 300 products, it tends to work quite well. But as you get more complex, AI becomes a bigger friend to you because it just becomes more and more difficult to do anything. But yeah, once there's about 300 products, you're good to go. Mike, you've got a lot more than that. You're probably in the 25,000 SKUs, that kind of range, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's quite a substantial catalogue and with multiple colour options and bits and pieces. So
yeah,
a lot of variants. Yeah, and then it becomes a lot more complex.
Yeah, good question. I think that's it from the questions, guys. If you're viewing this, there is a handout, so feel free to click on that to find out how to contact our two panelists here. But to both of you guys, thank you for joining, and to all our viewers today, thank you for joining. Conscious that we went over time, but thank you for staying if you have. And yeah, I think that's it, guys. So thank you very much.
Good to speak to you guys. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Alan.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mark.
See you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.